Hello there, you're watching All 24 News World News Program. Next up are the headlines. Zionist raids in Gaza leave several martyrs while blockade worsens the humanitarian crisis. And in the West Bank, occupation forces execute a young Palestinian man. Also in our news, Algeria's President Abdelmadjid Tebboune says mining at Gharish Bilad kicks off early next year and the Tindouf Bashar Railway will be ready by January 2026. Meanwhile, the African Development Bank is keen to share Algeria's development experience, and Algeria and Vietnam plan new strategic partnership agreements. Coming up next, the Polisario Front insists a referendum is the only way to guarantee self-determination. East Timor backs this approach, and Spanish buddies urge Madrid to officially recognize the Sahrawi Republic. And later on, clashes erupt in Sudan's West Kordofan between the army and the Rapid Support Forces. Hundreds are reportedly held in secret detention, and the African Union calls for dialogue, rejecting any parallel government. The details are straight ahead. Hello again and welcome back to the program. It's great to have you with us tonight. First up in our news, at Khan Yunis's Nasser Medical Complex, 3 martyrs' bodies arrived after Zionist airstrikes, while another was killed in northern Gaza. Airstrikes and demolitions continue across the entire strip, violating the ceasefire. Meanwhile, the Gaza Health Ministry reports 266 dead and over 650 wounded since the ceasefire began, with 17 bodies brought to hospitals in the past 3 days. Since the war started on October 7th last year, nearly 70,000 people have been killed and more than 170,000 injured. In southern Gaza, dozens of tents from displaced families are flooded. With the humanitarian situation worsening, Hamas is urging the UN, Arab League, and the OIC to act fast. Zahra Farjani brings us the story from the ground on the suffering faced by the residents there.
Life in tents has become the reality of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip after losing everything in the Zionist genocide. Rains of the past few days have added even more chaos to lives already turned upside down for nearly 2 years. Here in the Zawaida camp, Jihan and her 6 children watched their tent collapse under the force of strong winds and heavy rain.
I was baking bread when everything collapsed. We went to shelter in another tent, but it was the same there. The wind blew all night, and that tent also fell on us. Look at this. Everything inside is destroyed, and it is flooded. It is a real disaster.
Their tent was already makeshift, offering no comfort and barely meeting the minimum needs, no water and no electricity. Like many displaced families, Jihan has learned to live with these harsh conditions, but the latest storm have brutally reminded everyone just how fragile their situation is.
It's unlivable. If my children and I tried to stay inside, it wouldn't be possible. I am literally holding it up with my own hands. Otherwise, it collapses. We can't sleep in it anymore. We don't even have light. We sleep in complete darkness. There is no electricity, and we can't afford a battery or even candles.
It's a disastrous situation that cannot go on. With winter approaching fast, Palestinians in Gaza are pleading for urgent assistance.
We need new tents, tarps, clothes. Look at my daughter. She's wearing just a t-shirt in this cold. We can't even find clothes. We have nothing, no money.
Until better days come, Gazans are once again showing remarkable resilience. In the midst of their suffering, solidarity and mutual support remain their strongest allies.
Elsewhere in occupied Palestine this time, a young Palestinian man was killed and 5 others wounded on Sunday as occupation forces carried out raids across the occupied West Bank. The Red Crescent says one man was killed and another injured in Nablus's old Askar camp, while 3 more were seriously hurt in Al Farah camp in Tubas, and another wounded near the separation wall in Aram, north of Al Quds. Earlier Sunday, occupation forces also arrested at least 15 Palestinians, including a released prisoner in Ariha and several others in Khalil, Ramallah, and Tulkarm. In the Middle East still, this time in Lebanon, the UN peacekeeping force UNIFIL says a Zionist tank fired on its troops near an occupation position inside Lebanese territory. Peacekeepers had to take cover, but were able to withdraw safely after the tank pulled back. And in southern Syria, occupation forces advanced into the village of Mariya in Dara on Sunday night. According to the Syrian Arab news agency, troops moved several dozens meters into agricultural land in the Yarmouk basin, fired toward the village perimeter, and then withdrew. In another development, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says Tehran is ready for diplomacy, but rejects talks that impose dictates. Speaking on Sunday, he criticized Washington's current approach, saying it shows no willingness for fair and equitable negotiations.
The current approach of the U.S. administration in no way indicates a willingness to hold balanced and fair negotiations that would achieve mutual benefit. What we have seen from the Americans so far has actually been an attempt to impose their own demands, maximalist and entirely excessive demands. In the face of such behavior, we see no opportunity for dialogue. Nevertheless, we have been ready for talks and we will remain so, but we will never participate in negotiations under the threat of dictates.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi highlighted the full rebuilding of the country's defense forces after last June's attacks, warning that any repeated aggression would be met with an even stronger response.
Our sites were damaged, but our technology is still intact. Our willpower has grown stronger. In terms of defensive capability, we are far stronger than we were before the 13th of June. Our strength has been completely rebuilt. We've learned many lessons from this war. We have clearly understood our weaknesses as well as the enemy's weaknesses. We have understood our strengths and the strengths of others. If it happens again, we are now better prepared to respond with even greater force.
Back home, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune chaired a cabinet meeting in which he announced that the Garage Bilat iron ore mine in Tindouf will be fully operational in the first quarter of 2026, alongside the new Tindouf-Bachar railway line set to start in January. The move marks a big step toward economic sovereignty and reducing reliance on imports. The cabinet also approved upgrading 11 towns to full provinces, while the president ordered plans to raise the minimum wage, boost unemployment benefits, and investigate recent wildfires. In other news, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune met with Sidi Welta, President of the African Development Bank, on Sunday. The meeting, attended by top Algerian officials, focused on sharing Algeria's development experience across the continent. Welta also expressed the bank's support for the Lagouat-Ghardaya-El-Mnia railway project, highlighting its importance in linking the Sahel to the Mediterranean.
I had the opportunity to express the African Development Bank Group's appreciation for the level of development in Algeria and the promising prospect for transferring Algerian experience in various fields, such as housing and seawater desalination, to other African countries. Thank you very much. The African Development Bank Group is proud of the strong support it receives from Algeria.
البنك الإفريقي للتنمية يعتز بالدعم القوي الذي يحظى به من طرف الجزائر.
And in other news, Algeria and Vietnam are set to sign several agreements during Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chin's visit from November 18th to 20th. Khairuddin Ben Issa, Secretary General of Algeria's Ministry of Industry, called the visit a milestone for strengthening ties and building a renewed strategic partnership.
ولا يفوتني في هذا السياق أن أعرب عن عميق تقديرنا.
The holding of this session reflects the depth of the historical relations that unite our two friendly countries and expresses our shared desire to move forward in strengthening bilateral cooperation by adapting it to the great potential available to both nations. Algerian-Vietnamese relations, which span more than 6 decades, have proven to be a model of trust, mutual respect, and sincere solidarity. We reaffirm our commitment to working together to elevate these relations to broader horizons, in line with current economic transformations, and by leveraging the human and natural resources as well as the strategic assets our two countries possess.
Khairuddin Ben Issa, Secretary General of Algeria's Ministry of Industry, also highlighted 6 decades of cooperation based on trust and solidarity, and emphasized Algeria's goal to expand collaboration into even more areas. For his part, the Vietnamese Deputy Minister of Construction, Nguyen Thanh Van, announced a major boost in trade with Algeria.
I would like to congratulate the Algerian government on the formation of its new cabinet in September 2025. I'm confident that with the strengthened capacities and organizational structures of both sides, particularly the co-chairing role of Algeria's Ministry of Industry, the Intergovernmental Committee will operate more efficiently and unlock new opportunities for cooperation. Algeria remains a key partner for Vietnam in Africa and is its 4th largest export market on the continent. Bilateral trade has advanced significantly after reaching about $220 million in 2024. It exceeded $450 million in the first 9 months of 2025, an increase of more than 200% over the same period last year.
Similarly, Vietnamese officials praised the growing partnership with Algeria in the hydrocarbon sector. Deputy Minister Nguyen Thanh Van highlighted plans to boost production at the Bir Saba field through the existing Sonatrach Petro-Vietnam partnership. Meanwhile, Vietnamese Ambassador Trang Quoc Cang announced a new cooperation agreement during Prime Minister Pham Minh Chin's visit, calling it one of Vietnam's most successful international projects. Still with economy-related news, Omani companies are showing growing interest in Algeria's hydrocarbons and mining sectors. Algerian Minister Mohamed Arqab met with Omani Ambassador Saif Rashid Al-Badai to discuss investment plans from firms like Abraj Energy, Suhail Bahwan Holding, and Mohammed Al-Barwani's Petrogas. They also explored expanding cooperation into mining, including joint projects for phosphate extraction, phosphoric acid, and fertilizers production. Moving on to another development now, the Polisario Front insists a referendum is the only way to guarantee the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. Abi Bushraya Bashir, special advisor to the Sahrawi president, told the BBC that only the Sahrawi people can decide the territory's final status in line with UN resolutions.
The insistence on the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination in accordance with UN Charter and principles means that the Sahrawi people hold the key and the right to determine the final status of the Western Sahara territory, since for the UN it is a non-independent territory awaiting decolonization. It is the Sahrawi people who will determine who will have the sovereignty over Western Sahara, and this is what the Security Council referred to when it said the right to self-determination in accordance with the UN Charter.
And on the international front, East Timor has reaffirmed its support for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination in Western Sahara. Prime Minister Kairala or Zana Gouchmao, in a letter to the Sahrawi President Brahim Ghali, said backing the Sahrawi cause is a moral duty and reiterated his country's steadfast commitment to their sovereignty.
Timor-Leste continues to stand firmly with the Sahrawi people in supporting their right to self-determination and full sovereignty over their land. From our own experience, we understand the deep meaning of these aspirations and the moral duty that falls on states to support them.
On a similar note, the Spanish Agency for Refugee Assistance is urging Spain and the international community to act urgently to protect the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and end Moroccan violations. At a symposium on 50 years of exile, resistance and struggle, over 100 experts condemned human rights abuses and called on Spain to recognize the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic and fully engage with the Polisario Front, stressing that a recent UN resolution doesn't change the Sahrawi people's legal rights.
Since Spain's withdrawal from Western Sahara and the ensuing illegal Moroccan occupation, the Sahrawi people have been divided between those living in refugee camps and those residing under Moroccan control.
Elsewhere in Africa, fierce clashes erupted in Sudan's West Kordofan between the army and the Rapid Support Forces. Military sources report explosions from heavy artillery near the 22nd Division headquarters in Baba Nusa in central Sudan as both sides exchanged fire. In Sudan still, humanitarian workers say hundreds of missing people in Al Fashir are being held in secret detention centers by the Rapid Support Forces, with families forced to pay ransoms for their release. Meanwhile, the Sudanese Doctors Network reports cases of rape against 32 girls from Al Fashir, calling for an urgent international investigation. Meanwhile, the African Union's Special Envoy for the Prevention of Genocide, Adama Deng, began a 4-day visit to Sudan on Sunday to assess violations against civilians by the Rapid Support Forces. He'll meet officials from the Foreign Affairs and Justice Ministries, as well as the Attorney General. The AU insists no parallel government will be recognized and calls for dialogue and humanitarian corridors. Meanwhile, the African Great Lakes Summit urged the UN and the AU to condemn the RSF and label it as a terrorist group. In the same context, the U.S. Special Envoy for African Affairs, Massad Boulos, says a ceasefire in Sudan is under negotiation and called for its immediate acceptance. Speaking on Saturday, he said the U.S. hopes to make progress soon on a broader plan, including a transition to civilian rule, while keeping humanitarian needs as the top priority.
The conflict in Sudan, the humanitarian side of this conflict is the world's biggest humanitarian crisis today, and the world's biggest humanitarian catastrophe. Especially what happened in Al Fashir in the last 2 or 3 weeks. We urged the parties, and we've been urging them for the last few days, including Secretary Rubio in his statement 2 or 3 days ago. We're urging them to accept this proposal and implement it immediately without delay. We're also working on the bigger plan, which includes transition to a civilian-led government and the entire political aspect and the political process. The top priority right now remains the humanitarian aspect and the humanitarian truce.
Moving on to Europe now. In Ukraine, to be precise, 1 person was killed and another injured in a large-scale Russian attack on the Zaporizhia region. Officials say Russian drones struck residential buildings, causing the casualties. Meanwhile, Moscow's defense ministry claims its forces have captured 2 towns, Rovnopol and Malayatokh-Mashka, after what it called decisive operations. Meanwhile, Ukraine's military says it launched a drone strike on Russia's Novokhy oil refinery in Samara on Sunday, causing explosions and a fire. The Rosneft-operated facility, which processes about 160,000 barrels a day, was hit for the second time after a previous Ukrainian strike in August partially shut it down. In related news, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Greece will supply gas to help Ukraine cope with losses from Russian attacks on power plants and gas facilities. Ahead of his visit to Athens on Sunday, he confirmed agreements worth around 2 billion euros for LNG imports to cover Ukraine's winter energy needs.
You know, Mr. President, that winter is coming, a difficult winter for Ukraine. There are many challenges for Ukraine. The strikes are daily with drones and missiles. So we thank you, first of all, for your political support and for your support in the energy sector. For months now, we have been engaged in negotiations regarding bilateral cooperation between us and the energy sector.
Still with energy-related news, Serbia this time has received a 3-month U.S. license to find a buyer for Russian-owned oil company, NIS, a key for winter fuel supplies. Serbian Energy Minister Dubravka Djevdovic-Handanovic said Gazprom Naft and Gazprom, which together own 56% of the country's only refinery, asked the U.S. Treasury for permission to hand control to a third party.
What we must keep in mind is that the Russians need to agree what is being proposed, and so far they have acted as advisors in these talks, which have been transparent and open. As for whether they will give up more control or whether that will even be requested, we will have to wait and see, as well as which side will be willing to take concessions, so I prefer not to get ahead of events.
Bulgarian Prime Minister Rozan Zelyazakov says keeping the Lukoil refinery running is a top priority, but warns U.S. approval for transactions doesn't solve the crisis. He adds the refinery still faces big challenges, with its future tied to ongoing geopolitical tensions and the expansion of sanctions due to the war in Ukraine.
We must not allow such provocations or any obstacles to the normal operations of the refinery. Our main task now is to ensure the regular and orderly supply of crude oil. The U.S. decision to allow commercial transactions with local refineries should not make us completely relaxed, because many challenging days, weeks and months still lie ahead for the facility. The main goal is to ensure that this asset, a key part of our vital infrastructure, continues to operate without disruption.
Trump rolls back tariffs on over 200 imported foods, from coffee to beef, aiming to ease rising grocery prices and ease inflation worries while strengthening trade ties. Here's Yasin Eriktina.
Amid growing concern over rising grocery bills, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the rollback of tariffs on more than 200 imported food items, including coffee, beef, bananas and oranges. The decision, effective retroactively from Thursday night, seeks to ease consumer pressure and calm inflation fears. Indeed, the exemptions mark a policy reversal for Trump, who had previously denied that his tariffs contributed to price increases. Speaking about Air Force One on Friday, he admitted tariffs may in some cases raise costs, but insisted the U.S. faces virtually no inflation.
Say they may in some cases, but to a large extent they've been borne by the country. As an example, we have virtually no inflation, and yet we've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars. So we've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars. We've used tariffs to stop wars.
According to the White House, the move forms part of a new trade deals with countries such as Argentina and Ecuador, targeting goods not produced domestically. Moreover, Trump announced a plan to provide $2,000 payments to middle and lower-income Americans next year, financed through tariff revenues. Trump's decision echoed beyond U.S. borders, drawing praise from key trading partners. Brazil's vice president described it as a step in the right direction, while Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong said lifting beef tariffs would directly support Australian farmers and strengthen bilateral trade relations.
We welcome the lifting of these tariffs. That's a good thing for Australian beef producers. We maintain a clear, consistent position. We do not support tariffs. We believe in being able to access each other's markets. We think that's in the best interests of consumers as well as of producers.
Força do comércio exterior brasileiro.
The limited reduction in some tariffs announced by Washington marks an encouraging first step toward correcting the current course between the two countries. However, Brazil remains unsatisfied with this measure and will continue to push for broader cuts. The ongoing imposition of 40% tariff on coffee is unjustified, particularly given that the United States depends on Brazil as a major supplier on this commodity. From an economic standpoint, this level of tariff should be reviewed without delay.
Overall, the tariff rollback signals a strategic shift in Washington's trade policy, one that aims to balance domestic economic concerns with international partnerships, as governments and markets alike watch for its broader impact on the global trade.
And finally, it's time to catch up on other news stories making headlines in the news in brief.
The UN and the African Union reaffirmed support for stability in Libya, praised progress in national reconciliation, and endorsing the roadmap toward elections to end the transitional period.
African Union Commission Chair Mohamed Ali Youssef welcomed the Doha Framework Agreement between the Democratic Republic of Congo government and the March 23 movement, calling it a historic step towards stability in Eastern Congo. He praised both sides' commitment to dialogue and reaffirmed the African Union's support for lasting peace in the country.
Britain announced the largest overhaul of its asylum policy in modern time in comments to the BBC on Sunday morning. Home Secretary Suana Mahmoud said the country will make refugee status temporary and extend the wait for permanent residency to 20 years, 4 times the current period.
In Spain, Bilbao warmly welcomed the Palestinian national team ahead of its friendly against the Basque country. Peaceful demonstrations and a striking display by Basque fans highlighted solidarity with the victims of Gaza and global support for the Palestinian cause.
Now with this, dear viewers, we reach the end of our news for tonight. Visit our social media platforms for the latest updates or catch up on any part you missed. I'm Karim Faz Zachary on behalf of all 24 News team. Thank you for watching and take care.